video producer.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, or whatever time you're watching or listening to the show. Welcome to another episode of the Down in the Valley podcast. My name is Edson Ochoa, and I'm going to be honest with y'all. I am not in the best of moods to talk about the Toros, and I'm not talking about something personal. Like literally, I wish I could not talk about the Toros. That's how frustrated I am about this past game against the Pittsburgh Riverhounds. But we'll talk a little bit more right now once we get started. We have a good show for you all. We'll be talking about this past Saturday's RGV FC game versus Pittsburgh Riverhounds. We do have a special guest coming in at 8:45. They are from the 901 Soccer Podcast. What's up, Alan Carrillo? We will be talking about the upcoming match this Saturday against Memphis 901. I believe it'll be the first podcast guest this season, once at the beginning of the 2023 season. What's up, Mike? Hope, and it's going to be the first time that they're here on the Down in the Valley podcast. So, hope you guys treat them well. As always, we always welcome your questions, your comments in the chat, whether on Twitch, YouTube, or on Facebook as well. And don't forget to share this live stream with anybody you know, your mom, your dad, your friends, your all of the rest of your family, your dog, your grandma, your significant other, or your other significant other. I mean, you shouldn't have one, but whatever, right? Point is, share the show with everybody you know, especially if they love the Toros as much as you do. So without further ado, and before we start, let's go ahead and welcome our good friend and co-host of the show, Jacob Young. Jacob, how you doing?
Oh, I'm doing great. Apparently much better than you. Yes, the Toros lost. That is depressing, but I'm more than happy to talk about the Toros because, I mean, that roster was perfect. And I mean, you talk about this roster, of course, we'll get into it later, but we all know me and somebody that has been on the team was not in the roster once again. And that just brings joy to myself. Again, these are my opinions. And if the club gets upset, oh, well, come after me, Pimentel. I really don't care. Because you're here, you're getting red cards every single time you play. It's not worth it for you to be on the field. That's my strong opinion. I am starting off hot. I'm ready for this show. I cannot wait.
Well, let's talk about it. Continue talking about it. You're, you know, I'm honestly, I know exactly who you're talking about. Obviously, we're talking about Eric Pimentel. And I'm honestly on the same boat. What did I say, on the last episode when we were ranting about, what he did? I said, if I was the head coach, I would freeze him. I would freeze him on the bench. And obviously, we don't know if he was injured. I wouldn't be surprised if they would have come, if they were a club that would actually, mention injuries. they would have been like, oh, it's an injury. He's out because of an injury. I know Tigres does that. Tigres, whenever there's issues between, play with a player or something like that, between the head coach and the player, they'll come up with like and we call it like a ghost injury, to say that he's not gonna be playing when people know that is because during the week he got in a fight with the coach or anything like that. But it's not the case with RGV FC. They, like I said, they don't mention any injuries. It's safe to say, honestly, knowing Wilmer Cabrera and how he talked about that last red card from Eric Pimentel, just the fact that he did it twice in a row, Wilmer Cabrera isn't one to tolerate that kind of attitude, especially from a veteran. And yeah, I'm actually not surprised, despite the fact that they had a long break. They didn't play last Saturday, not last Saturday, but the previous Saturday. He decided to not play Eric Pimentel, and if I'm not mistaken, Jacob, he wasn't even on the bench.
Yeah, no, he was not. He was not on the bench, which, yeah, I mean, it could be a fake injury. It could be something that we didn't necessarily see, which, I mean, still could be it's a suspension from coach, like we said. I mean, there's multiple reasons of why. Wilmer's had this before. He lost the locker room for one of these reasons exactly. We go back to, it wasn't Cubo Torres, but it was Kyoto. No, that's not the right name.
Romel Kyoto.
Romel Kyoto, okay. I got scared that I said the wrong name, but yeah, no, it's. I mean, there was a reason. Romel Kyoto lost his mind on the field. I think it was against Atlanta United one time, and from there he didn't play with the Dynamo anymore, and it kind of, I think, maybe separated the locker room. I don't know, but I mean that's just one thing that as a coach you have to be more mindful about, and he seems like Wilmer was, and he's sticking to his guns, not tolerating that type of stuff, and whether or not that was up to him, which of course the lineup is normally up to the coach. That's that's going to be a reason. It's going to be a reason to not see a player on the field. And so I'm glad he's not, and I'm glad that Coach Wilmer Cabrera is taking it very seriously, that even a veteran like him will not be playing. And yes, we saw him at the autograph sessions.
Suspended. That's right. He is suspended.
So he was suspended. Okay. Yeah.
It just feels long. It just feels longer. It just feels longer than a week because of that break. Because of that break, like it just feels like he's been out longer than the fact that he hadn't served his suspension yet. I'm well aware about the Open Cup not counting, Mike, but it just like we're just so used to now that
I thought that there was a game in between two, Edson. Not gonna lie.
Yeah.
No, yeah, because I thought he was there at Detroit City.
Wait a minute, yeah,
because he got suspended. Right. So that would
wait.
That would be his second, which makes sense because normally 2 red cards equals 2 weeks.
You're right.
If you get them back to back.
Yes, you're right. Actually, it's strange though because usually the USL makes it, or maybe it's that it just doesn't come out in my timeline, considering all the wacky stuff that Elon Musk is doing with our Twitter timelines. But I do remember when the USL would announce, their discipline report, and they would mention, well, this player got a red card and will get, 2 game suspension or 1 game suspension, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I feel like now, like even within the website, it used to be a lot easier to find it and access it and read it. And now you've really got to dig through the website to try to find that discipline report. But yeah, you're right. It was Detroit City, and because of the second red card in a row, I guess it's it was at least another game for him. So what really caught me off guard, and let me give you the starting 11 for this match against Pittsburgh Riverhounds. So the starting 11 for the Toros was Tyler Derrick on goal. That's a given. Jonathan Ricketts, Wahab Akwe, Juan David Cabezas, Frank Nodarse, and Gabriel Benitez. So a line of 5 for RGV FC. The surprise was seeing Juan David Cabezas as a center back instead of Eric Kinsner, who in the first couple of games at home was getting some minutes as a center back with Wilmer Cabrera for RGV FC. Now all of a sudden, you bring down Juan David Cabezas to the center back position instead of his habitual center defensive mid position. I'm not sure exactly, why he went with Juan David Cabezas, but that was his decision. I wish I could tell you, like, analyze this, like, oh, well, this is the reason why. I mean, it could be, leadership or something like that. But unfortunately, once we start talking about, the performance of this team on the pitch, he and I think almost all of the squad left a lot to be desired.
Oh yeah. Yeah, 100%. It's tough to say where this team is at because I don't know. I know we're only talking about the lineup, but coming into this match, no matter what, this team, losing to Tormenta FC. Now, don't get me wrong, there were a lot of rookies in that match, starting, of course, trying to get minutes and things like that. And we were trying out Kisner and other players. And I liked the way a bit that Kisner was playing, but to switch him out with Frank Nodarse and to put JDC back in is good. And Juan David Cabezas plays with aggression. We all know that. So coming into the match, we expected him to try to set the tone for the physicality. That's how I like to put it. Ricketts, of course, being there is pretty normal. Francois, well, what can we say about him? Really nothing, because he hasn't produced anything even in this match. We'll get more into that again, but we can't really say anything because he hasn't shown anything. Ricky Ruiz, great guy. Again, just very difficult. He has not shown up yet. And Cabrera Jr., is the pressure getting to him? I hope not. And I hope it's not his father as well. Now, don't get me wrong, but maybe, and we'll get way into this more, he's better off at a different team, not coached by his father. Maybe he can get away from Wilmer Cabrera just in general and see. Yes, I know he's still playing well, but that, of course, is a different topic for a different day. But in my opinion, if you're able to branch off, get away from technically your family, sometimes you do metaphorically spread your wings and you fly. You get out there and you start to score a bunch of goals. How did he do at when he got away from the Toros the first time? He went to college at Butler. He played pretty freaking well. He's coming over here.
It's different. It's different. But we'll talk about we'll talk more in depth about, specifically the front three. I've got a graphic for y'all that we'll talk hopefully before the 901 Soccer podcast comes on.
We also have to get this done by 9 because we got some USA Mexico to watch.
It's the C team versus the B team.
Yeah, that's also a good point. So
yeah,
it's still exciting.
Let's try to make this really, really quick. By the way, guys, in case you guys are gonna log off to watch the game, don't forget you can always listen to the podcast version on starting tomorrow. Hopefully, I can get it uploaded by tomorrow afternoon, because now I'm starting to upload the videos to Spotify as well, so it takes a whole lot longer to actually upload and process compared to just audio.
A little bit better than DBC.
yeah, well, let's continue on with the starting 11. So the midfielders for RGV FC were Gringo Torres and Taylor Davila. That hasn't changed. That still stays the same. And then up on top, we've talked about our front three: Wilmer Jr., Cristiano Francois, and Ricky Reese. Now RGV FC with this lineup, I mean, they dominated possession, but that's about it. I mean, I feel if this game was the winner was calculated based on how much possession they had, I think we'd be the champions of the USL Championship, but they're not. The problem is, at least for me in my eyes, is like they have possession, but they don't know what to do with it once they get to the final third. You know, so and then you add to that, you know, the high pressure from Pittsburgh Riverhounds. I was just watching I was just reading a tweet by USL Tactics, where he's talking about the Riverhounds and how they have pretty much been the best team in the USL. Right now, they're the best defense in the USL. Part of it is he attributes it to the high pressure that they have used so far this season, and it really, 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 you know, paid dividends for them, especially in the second half with against RGV FC. In the first half, it seemed like the Toros and the Riverhounds, they did kind of limit the dangerous opportunities. However, obviously, the Riverhounds were much more dangerous compared to RGVFC. I believe they had maybe like Tyler Derrick had one save, which we'll show the video right now in a little bit. And they had some other opportunities as well, right in front of goal that didn't go in favor of them. So real quick, let me take a look at the chat. We've got Harry says, "What's up, RGVSC? Edson's a player. No, I'm not. I don't even have a girlfriend, much less a Sancha. You know." Abraham says, "Hey guys, just checking in. Have a great podcast. Knocking out for work at 3 a.m. I'll listen in the morning." Obviously, man, thank you for stopping by and saying hi, and I hope you enjoy the show once you start listening to it as you head over to work. Christopher Michael Gill says, "What's up, guys? I miss going to Toros matches already. Same here, man. Same here. And it's gonna be one more week for me that I'm gonna have to miss."
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's gonna be a while for Michael though, because he lives in New York.
Yeah,
New Jersey, I guess. I don't know.
That really sucks. And then Juan Click TV says, patiently waiting for Jacob to name drop me. Harry says, "I don't think they're sending out the discipline report. Normally it's on the preview, but so far this year it has not been." That's not good. That is not good.
No.
Alan Carrillo says, USA 2-0, just saying.
Let's settle, yeah.
Yeah, I wouldn't doubt it, even if they're playing a C team. Harry says, "In my opinion, RGV did not look good this week. It was on the road, a narrow pitch, and wet weather." Mike says, "Wilmer can't finish." Hold that thought. Hold that thought, Mike. We'll talk about that. Harry Austin says, "No, Sacramento is the best defense in the USL, only allowed one goal. Maybe in the East, Pittsburgh is the best, but Sac Republic is for real. Where are the forwards injured?" Yes, Mike said it. They are injured. But
yes. Will we get one back this week? We don't know. It's only rumors.
Yeah, we'll see what happens, honestly. But anyway, so RGV, like I said, RGV, they had everything kind of going against them, at least to me. We knew coming off the bat that, you know, our offense has not produced, and I'm specifically talking about the top three. You know, the fact that most of our goals, and I've talked about it ad nauseum, have been scored by midfielders and defenders. And in fact, even Taylor Davila actually has the most shots on target compared to the rest of the team. I believe he's had 10 shots and 6 of them were on target, or even no, I think it was like 5 out of 6 or something. I'll have to double check that stat. I was looking at it yesterday when I was looking at the front three. But anyway, so early in the game, let me move the chat over so I can actually see the preview. So really early in the game, this is the 6th minute, and you have a throw in from the Riverhounds, and then they send a through ball that is intercepted by Juan David Cabezas. The problem is that Juan David Cabezas, you didn't control the ball correctly. Considering it was kind of humid, it's the start of the game, so it was probably still wet from I don't know if they watered it before, because they usually teams do that. I don't remember. I know it rained really hard like later on in the game, but I don't know if before the match it had rained as well. So the pitch was probably still humid. But anyway, the thing is, Juan David Cabezas is not able to control the ball correctly, which means he wasn't able to shield the ball correctly. So what ends up happening is that the Pittsburgh Riverhounds player is able to get the ball away, and then that leads to a dangerous opportunity inside the box for RGV FC. Right now, they'll show once they show the close up, you'll see what happens. So right here, you get the through ball. Juan David has it, can't shield the ball correctly, gets, he ends up falling. He loses his balance and he falls. So number 4 is able to get the ball back for the Pittsburgh Riverhounds. What concerns me, though, and not necessarily a concern about injury, but it concerns is that Juan David Cabezas, instead of getting up right away, he just lies there and starts just watching the rest of the play, sitting on the grass. It seems to me, maybe I'm just kind of looking at it, a little bit too close, maybe with the magnifying glass or lo que sea. But it concerns me that the lack of urgency for Juan David Cabezas in that play is kind of questionable at best.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I don't like it at all. I understand. He feels like the play is up, but that's given up. That's literally not what a soccer player is supposed to do. It is super, super, super strange. I don't like it at all. I don't care. It's you're not supposed to do that at all. Give up on a play, even if you feel like it's done, and you probably won't get to it. In that situation, in that specific situation, you get your butt up and run back to the ball, no matter what. You don't just sit down, watch it. It's the most annoying thing. I understand if you're going to get posterized in basketball, but this ain't basketball. You make a challenge. You try to get back to it. You're showing Cabrera how much you want to be there in the end. And it seems like he wants to be there 0%. If you're going to sit down on the dadgum floor, on the dadgum ground, and watch the play finish, forget about it. Get out of here. I don't want to see you. I want players who care to try on every single play. Not just sit down. If you're actually hurt, I get it. But he was not actually hurt at all. No, he just wanted a breather. It doesn't matter. The play's not over.
I think for me, I wouldn't. I personally don't go to that extreme. I think it does get frustrating, seeing that he doesn't get up right away. But then I also realize, he's not young, so at this point but at least I want to see him try, getting up, because if you notice when he's down, he goes like this, like where he's questioning, I guess, his teammate. I think it was Frank Nadarce, like he's questioning like what the hell happened or something like that, so that's the kind of stuff that is like, oh, what the hell's going on? Obviously, I'm not going to go to the extreme and say, oh, I don't want him on the team for this specific reason, but in my eyes, I mean, like, I just want to see a little bit of a attempt to get up. I mean, if you took the time away to raise your hand, and start complaining to your teammates, that effort could have easily gone to try to get yourself back up. you were probably going to be already out of the play, but at least, you put yourself in a favorable situation in case there's a rebound where you're already, up, or you're on the, in the process of getting up, so that you're able to go to the ball or fight for the ball.
Yeah.
If push comes to shove, por así decirlo. And fortunately for RGV, the play did not end up in a goal. It was really, really close, honestly. There was, a complaints from Pittsburgh about a potential penalty in the box. I honestly don't see it. So, but, the problem is that RGV was offensively, and you could actually see from Pittsburgh, you could see some danger coming in. We go into the next clip. This is in the 18th minute. So as you can see right here, RGV has possession of the ball, right? So once they get towards the middle of the field, that's where you see the pressure coming in. You see that left back, how high up he goes to try to put the pressure on Jonathan Ricketts, who, by the way, honestly, did not have a good game at all. We've always talked about how well Jonathan Ricketts has played as an outside back for RGV FC, not only last season but this season. In this game, he did not have a good game at all. He succumbed really easily to the high pressure from Pittsburgh Riverhounds. So here he has control of the ball, and then he tries to retain the ball, trying to find somebody that's open. But you see, everybody that could be a potential, player to pass it to, the passing lane is closed down by the defense. Yep. So now he's kind of forced to maintain the ball, try to find somebody else. And so what ends up happening is one bad touch on the dribble, the ball gets away from him. And so he ends up losing the ball. The rebound gets towards the attacker, and then he's right in front of goal to shoot. Fortunately, Tyler Derrick is able to make the save and send it out for the corner off of Dick was shot. But you can see right there how early in the game Pittsburgh's high pressure was really causing a toll on RGVFC. And how many times have we said about RGVFC last season and this season that the high pressure, that just like RGVFC is able to generate the high pressure, they also kind of fall trap whenever they get the high pressure against them.
Yeah, exactly. They just cannot do anything with it. They've time and time again, it's weird how every single season we talk about that same exact thing where they just cannot find a way. That strategy of 4-3-4 not necessarily working towards that. And yeah, it's frustrating not being able to get past that high pressure, because, and I have seen it time and time again, it's very difficult to get past that. But you can also get burned with that high pressure offense off of a counter attack potentially. So there is a way to get around it. But RGVFC year in, year out cannot find a way around it, and it is very frustrating. I can't tell you why. I could not tell you why besides just bad play.
The problem is like they've tried going with long balls. Yep. And then not just in this game, but in previous games this season. The problem is up on top, the players who's supposed to be the player we're supposed to take advantage of to make something out of these long balls just hasn't been productive in that aspect. And I'm obviously talking about Cristiano Francois. There were multiple times where they did try to go for the long ball towards Cristiano, and he would receive it. He would lose the ball really quickly. He would lose the duel against the defender. So when you're in that situation, it's kind of like, well, what do I do now? Right. So that, I don't know, could we say that is something that, Wilmer really needs to work on? Do we really need something different? Yeah. I mean, that's on Wilmer Cabrera to analyze and make the necessary changes. But the fact that we are, this is week 6. So I guess we're 5 games into the season, and we're still struggling with that. It's a little concerning that we might need some different personnel to try to counteract the high press whenever the opposing team is able to generate that against us. So, like I said, because of the high pressure, really RGV FC, despite them having a lot of possession, they weren't really productive with it. And in fact, in the first half, they only had one shot, and it was blocked from Taylor Davila. In the same first half, Pittsburgh had 5, one of them on target. The one that I just showed you from Dikwa. So it was frustrating to see on the offensive side of that. Juan Click says, we seem to forget that last season we have 12 different goal scorers and started with 4 trouble, yet we turned it around for the middle late stage of the season. I'll get to that. Keep that in your head.
Yeah.
We'll talk about it right. Yeah, we'll talk about it real quick. So, like I said, it was Pittsburgh was a little bit more dangerous. They were continuing to use, the high pressure. If we look at this clip that's coming up, this is the 29th minute. Long ball from Pittsburgh. Dikwa is able to get past, or no, that's not Dikwa, but they were able to get past Wahabakwe. Where's my pause menu? Where's my pause? Okay, here we go. So there's the long ball over to number 19, which is Kisa. Tyler Derrick is able to come up and clear the ball. However, the clearance lands straight towards the opposing team's player, who is able to recover it right in front of the midfield line. And this was going to be a dangerous play, because Tyler Derrick is way out of goal, and so he basically has a clear shot towards the net. But what happens here, and I posted about it on Twitter, this is one of the kudos that I have about the defense, at least in the first half, was that they were able to take advantage of an uncontrollable first touch from that Pittsburgh player, and that gave them enough time to come in and close the spots. If you see right here in this moment, the player takes a shot, but Jonathan Ricketts is able to get to the hit and deflect that ball away from the goal. And if you see right there, you got Juan David Cabezas, you've got Gringo Torres, and then you've got Jonathan Ricketts closing in the spot, closing in those angles. And that forced the Pittsburgh player to make a shot that was uncomfortable, that was not going to be easy to get on goal. And they were able to keep a dangerous opportunity away from Pittsburgh to get the opening goal of the night. So, like I said, in some aspects defensively, they know they're showing improvements, like they show chemistry on what exactly they need to do. But unfortunately, as we saw in previous games, there are some things that you can see the total lack of communication between the defense.
Yeah, exactly. There's not the chemistry that we have had in the past season, for sure. It's something. I mean, it's 6 weeks in. We go again of saying it was understandable the first 2 weeks of them not having good communication. This is 6 weeks in. They've been with each other for that long. They've been able to practice with each other and getting that communication. Something is lacking on the training facility right now to figure it out. That's just the fact of the matter. If you cannot have a team that is unified, then you're going to have results like this consistently happen. And yes, of course, our RGVFC need strikers, but they also, in a sense, need that fast young player that can lead the defense, because right now it does not seem like they have that leader. Mm-hmm. Tyler Derrick can only do so much behind goal as being a leader, but you do need a leader at the midfield. You do need a leader at
which should be Gringo.
Defensive side. It should be Gringo.
And I think he's shown it. I think he's shown it.
He
I
has.
think, and the problem is is that defensively, I don't know what's going on, because you look at this defensive line of Ricketts, Wahabakwe, Frank Nodarse, and Juan David Cabezas. Well, that's a question considering that he's technically a midfielder. Now they put him in a center back. So that kind of affects chemistry a little bit. And then now you've also got Gabriel Benitez, was a completely new player coming in, but at least in the center backs, when you got two of the three center backs that have already played together, in previous games, you'd expect a little bit more chemistry. But so far, in the first half, the defense looked solid. Like I said, they limited Pittsburgh Riverhounds to only one shot on target. 5 shots total, but 1 shot on target. The problem is they just couldn't generate anything offensively throughout the whole game. Yep. Now we go over to the second half, and really early in the second half, the Toros find themselves, running against the 8 ball, with already a goal against them. So take a look at this play right here. Right. So this is the first goal for the Pittsburgh Riverhounds. I want you all that are watching this on YouTube, I want you to pay attention to this guy, number 13. Okay, as the play goes on. So he receives the ball right close to the wing, to the left wing, right? Jonathan Ricketts goes to pressure. So does Juan David Cabezas, forces 13 Biasi to send the ball back. Then they try going over towards the midfield. Dikwa is able to control the ball, passes the ball through the outside. Look at Biasi, 13. He's still out towards the wing, but there is nobody near him. There's nobody near him watching him. Juan David Cabezas is over here taking a look at number 22. Gringo Torres is closer to where the ball is. Wahab Akwe is where he needs to be, over here. And Jonathan Ricketts, he's basically in charge of covering number 19. So there's nobody from where he received the ball, or where he let go of the ball right now, close to the midfield line, all the way towards the end line. There is nobody there that's going to be, putting pressure on him, or at least not making it easy for him to receive the ball. And that's exactly what happens. Crossing the ball over to the other side where Biasic comes in all alone. So that forces Jonathan Ricketts to leave his attacker, number 22, and run all the way here towards where Biasi has recovered the ball. Now, Biasi waits for Jonathan Ricketts to get him and try to see where he's going to lead him. Now, I'm not a defender. My dad was a defender when he played. The biggest rule that they give you as a defender is you always want to try to lead the defender. If you can't lead him towards his weaker foot, try to lead him where a place where you're going to reduce his angle, where you're going to reduce his options. And that is, if you have to get him towards the end line, because once he goes towards the end line, he's going to run out of real estate to do what he wants to do. So you're going to corner him. So what Jonathan Ricketts here is doing is he's positioning himself to try to lead Biasi towards the end line, right? The problem is that when Biasi starts making all these, all this flamboyant little stutters, well, not flamboyant, but they're little stutters, he catches Jonathan Ricketts with his center of gravity the wrong way. In those little flicks, you see Jonathan Ricketts shift his weight towards his left. And so Biasi takes advantage of that and goes towards his own left, or towards the end line. But because Jonathan Ricketts' center of gravity is towards the other way, it makes it much harder for Jonathan Ricketts to react or in the agility to react and try to, and now he has to go and try and catch him. He's running behind, right? And so that gives Biasi the space and the opportunity to get the cross in where Dikwa is able to deflect it with his chest and into the back of the net. I don't see a glaring mistake. I know a lot of people, including sometimes us, We're really quick to try to nitpick a mistake and call it, oh, it's a glaring mistake that shouldn't be done. I think outside of, you know, the shifting of that center of gravity, which is normal for when you've got a skilled player like that, because when he's doing this the feints, you have to prepare yourself. If he goes this way, well, I have to shift my center of gravity towards my left so I can catch up to him, vice versa. The problem is that Biasi was too quick and was able to capitalize in that instant where Jonathan Ricketts shifted his momentum, right? So I don't see any glaring errors in this goal. Unfortunately, you know, it's those kind of things where there is a lack of communication on who really needs to guard. Is this going to be a man-to-man coverage? Is this going to be zone coverage? You know, the fact that there is no midfielder there or a winger to come back, and that's where Cristiano Francois is supposed to help to come down and try to make it harder for their right back or left back to go up freely and help out on the attack. That's my analysis of this. I don't know what you think, Jacob.
No, I have to agree with you on that. It's one of those situations, just, yeah, too spread out, and I don't know, just Pittsburgh were on it, kind of, and it was just frustrating. I think you said it best, and I don't think I could say it any better in that situation. Yeah, it's just frustrating the way it all played out.
So then, moving on real quick, because we're about to talk about for a minute. We'll be talking about the upcoming game on Saturday. But the last goal. This is the second goal. Oh, wrong video. So this is the play for the last goal, the second goal for Pittsburgh Riverhounds. So this is coming off of a free kick, right? That is trying to go, that is played short and then it is crossed towards the other side. Now here, RGV had the possession. The problem is that Gabriel Benitez, when he tries to clear that ball out, what he ends up doing is that he ends up putting the ball back towards our own 18-yard box and into where Pittsburgh was able to, you know, recover it quickly. That's one of the biggest no-nos when you're a defender. Never clear towards the middle of the field, especially when you're right in front of goal. And it wasn't intentional, but you know, the way that he ends up hitting it, that's what ended up happening. So Pittsburgh recovers the ball. They're able to open the ball back up, gets the cross in, and unfortunately, Wahabakwe gets beat towards that ball. And Forbes is able to score the second goal for the Riverhounds. In the end, you know, as much as RGV FC tried to recover and try to find an opportunity to at least get a goal, they just weren't able to. I think, in fact, they ended it with 0 shots on target. Yep. I think it was 6 shots total, 0 shots on target. Mm-hmm. The worst part is that they continue to try to use crossing to try to get something done on the offense.
Yeah, we don't have height.
But 11.1% crossing accuracy. Mm-hmm. They had 18 total shots, so only 2 of them actually landed towards a teammate. So when you've got trouble like that, it's very difficult to actually generate something offensively, especially like you just said, Jacob, the fact that we don't have a center striker, a true center striker to try and get those balls that are thrown inside the box. So let's go ahead and take a real quick break of talking about this game against the Pittsburgh Riverhounds. We want to go ahead and welcome Lawrence from the 901 Soccer Podcast into the Down in the Valley podcast. First of all, Lawrence, welcome to the show. I know it's the first time that you've been on to talk about, Memphis 901.
Mm-hmm.
I'm really looking forward to for us to know more about each other's teams and kind of get a little bit of an analyzation of this upcoming matchup between both of our teams. How's it going, man?
Hey, thanks for having me on. Doing pretty good. 901FC stinks this year, so I'm not doing as good as I was last year. But other than that, I can't complain too much.
So tell us real quick. Tell us a little bit about yourself, a little bit about the podcast, so that way our audience can know more about you.
Yeah, so I mean, I've been basically around the game of soccer my whole life. From the time that I was a player, I probably quit playing in probably about 8th grade. But one thing that a lot of people do know about me, and that some probably don't, is that I've been a referee it'll be 17 years in October.
Mm-hmm.
So I've been doing that. I also write for a national website called World Soccer Talk. I mainly do a lot of USA game previews, and then do attendance and TV ratings recaps at the end of each year for the men's team and the women's team. And I also do the attendance in the US for Mexico as well. So I do a lot of that. And I've been covering 901 FC here in Memphis for since 2019. I did not found this podcast. That was started by a guy named Scotty Smith. And then after the first year, he kind of stepped away from it. And I took over total control. But since then, we have an indoor team here in South Haven, Mississippi, the Memphis Americans in the NISL. That's don't get me started about that. The games are fun, but the league is a very low dollar operation. And but here, just the start of this year, I have been fortunate enough that the 901 Soccer Podcast is now part of Bluff City Media. So that is a new media company here in Memphis, and they have gone about getting a lot of people to cover a lot of different things. Obviously, the Memphis Grizzlies are playing in the playoffs right now. Then they brought me on to do the soccer stuff, both 901 FC and the Memphis Americans. And they've got people covering the University of Memphis. They got people covering the Showboats, which just started in the 3rd iteration of the USFL. So I'm really fortunate that a lot of the solo work of running my own thing for so many years has finally paid off.
So first of all, congratulations on Bluff City Media picking up the 901 Soccer Podcast.
Oh, thank you.
So tell us a little bit of what's going on with Memphis 901 this season so far. What were your expectations of this team going into this season, and have they been underwhelming? How was it pretty much how you were expecting Memphis 901 to have started this season? Because I'm looking right now at the standings, and right now Memphis is dead last in the Eastern Conference with only two points.
I want to say dead last in the whole league. There might have been maybe somebody that snuck a game in somewhere after this weekend. But I mean, as far as how this year's gone, I expected them to take a step back from last year because last year they were the number 2 team in the East. And they lost Ben Pierman to Charleston. And don't get me started about that. That was I gotta remind myself that I work for other people now, and some of those people know other people. There's a lot going on in the background, so I can't just go totally off the deep end like I could when I was running solo. But they let the USL Coach of the Year walk out the door for one of 2 reasons: either A, they didn't want to pay him, or B, they didn't want to give him roster control. And considering that during the first 2 years of 901 FC's existence in 2019 and 2020, they stunk. Tim Mulqueen was the manager, but every time they won a game, Tim Mulqueen was the first person to tell you that anything good that happened was because of Ben Pierman, because Ben Pierman was an assistant those first 2 years. He's like, this is something that Ben saw on film. This is something that Ben's been working with the guys during training. So then Tim Mulqueen gets fired, and Ben Pierman is the interim coach for the last 3 games of 2020. They win 2 of those 3 games. The one game they didn't win was his first game, where they went on the road to Louisville and got shelled, which, that happens because that's what Louisville does. Then they won the last 2 games, and then he's the full-time manager starting in 2021. They go to the playoffs for the first time ever. 2022 comes around, and they broke every record in club history. It's a small sample size because the team's not all that old. But they were going into the last game of the season. There was a chance that they could have been the number 1 seed in the East. And then they won a playoff game against Detroit, and thank God. I needed that like I need air. I had so many battles with running battles with the people from Detroit, which was kind of sad because Ben Pierman used to coach Detroit City back when they were in the NPSL. And for whatever reason, they all hate him now, I guess, because he's a corporate sellout or whatever.
Don't get me started on Detroit City.
No, they're super cool and edgy because they drop F-bombs a lot. That means they got better soccer knowledge than the rest of us. Anyway, so there were rumblings going around middle of the season that they weren't going to want to pay Ben. And so, there was a little bit of, is he coming back? Is he not? What's going on? Obviously, they get to the playoffs. They beat Detroit. They lose on a 95th minute penalty against Tampa in the conference semifinals. And so then he wins USL Coach of the Year. And then maybe, I think the week before the World Cup started, they were like, yeah, he's gone. He went to Charleston. And I don't think it's a coincidence that Charleston this season has not lost a game across any competition. I think they're number one in the East now, if I'm not mistaken. Ben Pierman just won Coach of the Month.
Yeah, they are number one. They have 4 wins and a draw.
And
so 4 wins and 2 draws, actually.
That's correct. That's right. And they ran riot in their Open Cup game as well. So I get it. It sounds kind of like being hung up on an ex, but that was a great relationship while it happened, man. Don't get upset. I mean, I'm glad that it happened, but I'm also sad that it's over.
What made Pierman so special that made his vision of the sport so influential and so effective for Memphis 901?
He has, just in talking, I remember the first time we ever interviewed him is one of the games where he was the interim coach in 2020. And I remember just right off the bat. And one thing I appreciated about Tim Mulqueen is he was a Jersey guy. And so there was no coach speak with Tim Mulqueen. But when you got to talking to Ben Pierman, there was also very little coach speak, but you could just tell he had a razor sharp soccer brain. And it was very, just from the way that he could tell, he didn't, give you necessarily what, all the X's and O's and the details from the game plan, but you could say, hey coach, what went wrong here? And he could go, well, we draw it up to do this. And, part of this is why that happened over there, he could tell you, and you could tell just by listening to him. I feel like even people that don't necessarily know the game of soccer could listen to him and go, that dude's a genius. That dude knows what he's talking about. Plus, you want to talk about buy-in. And when Tim Mulqueen was here, there were a lot of problems in the locker room, shall we say, even in games. I'll never forget in 2019, the Elliott Collier hat trick game against, at the time they were Bethlehem Steel, ended up being 5-0. And walking off the field, Cam Lindley and I forget who it was, but started just like screaming at each other, like ready to fight in the tunnel on the way to the locker room, just in front of the media, which was me and one other guy. And I was just sitting there like, you guys just won this game 5-0, and you're ready to throw down. I don't get it. But so under Tim Mulqueen, there were a lot of locker room problems, and that was never the issue with Ben Pierman. I don't know what he was putting in the tap water, but people like to throw around the phrase buy-in. There was a lot of buy-in, and with Ben Pierman there was a lot of buy-in. And so, but he's gone now, and we just have to suffer for it. So they hired Stephen Glass, and that's what I said. I said, when Ben Pierman leaves, you better have somebody awesome lined up, and it better be a big name, and it better be somebody with experience. Because if you just hire some random dude off the street, I'm going to be more pissed than I already am. And when they announced Stephen Glass, I looked at it and said, well, I recognize that name. And I had to think about why I recognize the name, but I was like, that's a good sign that I at least recognize it. And then I went and looked at it, and I said, oh, okay, he used to manage Atlanta United too. And then when Atlanta United fired Frank DeBoer, he was the interim coach then. And I was like, okay. But I look at it, and he's also managed in Scotland, and he's also managed in Ireland. And you look at all 4 of those managerial stops, he's had a losing record at all of them.
Oof.
I'm willing to throw it like at the before he coached the game. I was like, you know what? I can throw Atlanta United 2 results out the window because results for Atlanta United 2 and that organization are not super important. You're a feeder team to Atlanta United. And then I was even willing to cut him some slack for how bad he was at Atlanta United for that interim stint because he was taken over from uh, one of the all-time great grifters in the sport at the managerial level in Frank DeBoer. And it was the COVID year. Weird things happened in the COVID year. There were teams, in any sport, there were teams that are typically not good that were good that one year, and then there were teams that are usually awesome that stunk that year, and then there was the reversion to the mean. So I was going to give him a pass for that, but man, in Scotland, it wasn't good, and his interim stint in Ireland wasn't good either. And so at some point, you are what your record says you are, and so far this season, there are a lot of holdovers from last year. I might add. Ben Pierman took some players with him to Charleston, 3 or 4 of them, but not, he didn't take everybody. 901 FC kept. Most importantly, they kept Philip Goodrum, Aaron Malloy, and Leston Paul. So far this year, Philip Goodrum scored like 23 goals last year, I think it was. No goals this year. Leston Paul been out hurt. The goalkeeper situation was unsettled. 2 games into the season, they brought in Bill Hamid, which I was like, okay, that shows that like we're trying to take this seriously. Why we're waiting until 2 games into the season instead of the month before the season to bring people in? That we can only ask the illustrious Tim Howard those questions, and when you do, you probably won't get an answer. But Bill Hamid has come in and I can't quite say steadied the ship because we still haven't won a league game yet. But those first 2 home games against Loudoun, 3-1 loss. And then the next week against Pittsburgh, a 3-1 loss. So 6 goals in 2 games. Some of that's on the back line, some of that's on the keeper, but somebody's got to figure something out real quick because you can't ship 3 goals a game and be worth much of anything in any league. So they brought in Bill Hamid. Then, for whatever reason, the USL had 901 FC fly all the way out to Oakland. Day of the game, Oakland was like, "Oh yeah, by the way, we just put our turf for our field down like yesterday, so we can't play today."
I remember that. Yes.
And then we're like, "Okay, y'all can fly all the way home, and we'll just deal with this at a later time." I can imagine there were some people in the front office, and I don't want to see that were pretty pissed off about that, and I don't blame them because cross country flights are not cheap for teams. They're not cheap for individuals either. But then we go on the road to Miami and got a draw on that one. Went on the road in the Open Cup, won that game in the 124th minute. And then this past Saturday was a whole different level of debacle against Las Vegas Lights because Las Vegas Lights also stinks. I wrote up a preview for them for Bluff City Media. I think I called them the most aggressively average team in the league. They get a new manager every year. And so far this year, they had a 1-1 draw, a 2-2 draw, and a 0-0 draw. That is extremely mediocre, as my dad likes to say. So it was kind of a back and forth game. They scored. Vegas scored a bizarro freako goal from midfield that was one of those ones you're just trying to clear the ball and it bounces off the other player and just goes poo all the way into the goal. And then they scored probably what will end up being the goal of the year. 35 yards out, curler, kiss it off the post and in. Bill Hamid, Tim Howard, nobody saving that one.
Not even Superman.
No. And then you get to the 79th minute of the game and the weather rolled in and wind was whipping, raining sheets sideways. I mean, it was not playing around. So that's probably 8:45, 10 till 9. There's 11 minutes left in the game. I don't know what the procedure is. For some reason, I thought once you hit the 75th minute, you could, in theory, just say, that's it.
That's official.
And with it being tied 2-2, I figured that was probably going to be the most likely scenario. No, it was not the most likely scenario. They kept giving us updates like, hey, we're going to probably try to go back out at this time, but then there'd be more lightning over there, so you can't go back out. Then it'll be 10 o'clock, 10:15, and then once it got to a certain point, the updates just stopped coming. It got to be 11:30, and I said, "F this! I'm going home and going to bed," because I'm tired and cranky. Because I usually like to get down there about hour and a half, 2 hours before the game to look through the notes, do all that stuff. So I'd been in there since 5 o'clock. It was 11:30. I was going home. They restarted the game at 1 in the morning because I had sources that told me both teams, for whatever reason, were absolutely hell bent on 100% making sure that game got played.
That sounds so
Sounds
familiar.
Yep, very familiar.
And I'm sitting there going, what? Why? Just take the draw and move on down the road. I get that you're both desperate because you both stink, but take the draw and move on down the road. And so it got to the point when it was obvious that it was going to be replayed. I just sat there. I said, I hope whoever pushed harder for this restart gives up a goal and loses. That's what I was hoping for at that point.
Yeah.
But and of course, they came out. They played the last 11 minutes at 1:30 in the morning, and it finished 2-2. So I don't know if maybe there was, they weren't going to be able to just say the game was complete. They either had to finish it or abandon the match and play it again at a future date. And I'm sure Vegas did not want to fly all the way home and then all the way back, kind of like Memphis had to do going to and from Oakland. But that's where we are right now. We have no wins. Vegas has no wins, and it's just, I can't quite put my finger on what is going wrong this year for this team, other than, you lost the coach and a couple of players. But I would have thought that you kept enough key players, and then an addition of Bill Hamid and an experienced, if career losing manager, and Stephen Glass. But obviously it's we've played 4 or 5 league games. So I don't want to just hit the nuke button and blow the whole thing up after 5 games. But even that win in the Open Cup against Knoxville was not pretty. There's no flow. There's no like Ben's teams, especially last year, were fun. Even games where they weren't scoring. There were several times last year where they were scoring 3, 4, 5 goals a game. I think they played LA Galaxy 2 on a Wednesday and beat them 6-0. Maybe 5-1 or something like that. That was a game that I had to miss flying back from my sister's graduation in California. That's a different story. Thank you, American Airlines. But they're not fun. Like, even when they do score, like there've been games where they've scored this year. I don't think they've been shut out yet this year, but they're not fun. Like, you don't like, that's one of the things that I say as far as like gaining a foothold and actually attracting a real following in this town, is you don't necessarily have to be good, but you can't be boring. And I'm getting some serious 2020 vibes from this team, because covering 901 FC in 2020 was misery. I hated it. I like in 19, every day I woke up on it, I was like, hell yeah, it's game day. We're going downtown. Yeah, the team stinks, but it's fun. There's big crowds. There's chances. 2020, I was miserable. I was like, I have to go cover this rat ass team. It was miserable. I hated doing it. And there were times where I was seriously considering just saying, nah, not going. But I'm nothing if not dedicated. So I went. I'm not quite there yet with this team. The Open Cup run is still alive, so I got that going for us, but we got to go to Atlanta. So who knows how that's going to go. But I mean, they have gotten better a little bit. They quit giving up as many goals. They're not losing. But it's a small sample size thus far. But I mean, at some point, like I said earlier, you are what your record says you are, and you're dead last in the league. I mean, like there's no way to sugarcoat that. There's no way to spin it. There's no way to, it's putting as they said in Goodfellas, it's like putting a silk hat on a pig. There's just, you're dead last in the league. There's no two ways about it.
Yep. But what has been or is the play style of Stephen Glass so drastically different from Perman? Or why is Memphis struggling, and what are they struggling the most of right now, like in these 4 games that they've played so far?
Well, part of it is I think they really miss Leston Paul. And it's weird. I mean, he's been here since day one, and he's the captain. And so that's something that you need. And one thing I've noticed specifically in the first 2 home games this year is they've been very undisciplined, giving away, I mean, a stupid red card by Laurent Koscielny for no reason. It was one of those ones where he got fouled and then he retaliated, and it looked a lot worse than it really was. But you can't turn around and try to smack a dude and not get sent off for it, even if you only like brush him. It's because violent conduct. This is the referee in me. Violent conduct is striking or attempting to strike. It doesn't, nowhere in the laws of the game does it say dude's nose has to be shattered for you to get sent off. This is not the 1990 World Cup. They miss less than Paul. And it's interesting because those first couple of games after the game, I was downstairs with Stephen Glass going, hey, when do we expect? Because all it says on the injury report that they give me is groin. And it just says out. It doesn't say day-to-day expected return. It just says out, groin. Okay, so I've asked Stephen Glass after each of those first 2 games, like, when do we expect Leston back? He's like, probably about 1 more week. Probably about 1 more week. Well, that was like the second week of March, and here we are at the middle of April, almost at the end of April now, and there's still no Leston Paul. So I don't know what's going on there. But Leston Paul being out, I think, is a huge factor. Then after that, I don't know. I can't point my finger to any one tangible thing and say this is why it's not working, other than you just watch it and go, this is not working. Maybe that sounds kind of like a cop-out or a lazy answer, but there's a lack of discipline. You had a silly red card, gave away a silly penalty. Then this past game, Aaron Malloy missed a penalty almost the exact same way that he missed one in the 90th minute against Tampa in the playoffs last year. So whoever runs the show, I'm like, hey, Aaron Malloy, no more penalties for you. No more penalties for you. I will say I was pleasantly surprised. They're much better on corner kicks this year than they have been in the past, because through the first 4 years of their existence, you could just like not even pay attention to corner kicks because they're just not, they're all going way over there every time, way over there. They actually scored on one on Saturday. But I don't really know what it is. They have a bunch of key guys back from last year. They lost a few, sure. But getting Philip Goodrum and Aaron Malloy back were the two. Those were ones, like, as much crap as I gave the organization for letting Ben Pierman walk, and they deserved every bit of it, I had to give them as much credit for keeping Goodrum and Malloy, because those were guys I was like, come hell or high water, those dudes have to be here. Philip Goodrum scored 20 something goals last year. That doesn't, you can't just find 20 goal scorers just anywhere.
Yeah.
But I think maybe once Leston Paul gets back, and then once Goodrum starts scoring, that's how it is with goal scorers, right? You can go through a drought, but once you finally get that one, that's usually it builds on itself.
The floodgates open.
So it's early, but the early returns are far from promising. They got a lot of work to do, and I do think the addition of Bill Hamid is going to help with that. I really do. That's a guy with national team experience. That's a guy who had 200 career appearances in MLS. And all you paid dividends. You gave up 3 goals in each of your first 2 games, and since then, you haven't hit that mark. You gave up 1 goal against Miami and 1 goal in the Open Cup, and then 2 against Vegas, one of which was just an absurd fluke goal that you will see once every 10 years. So I think, they may be starting to improve, but I wonder if even this early juncture might be too little too late.
How would you describe their play style?
All over the map. Sometimes they want to do a high press and it doesn't work. And then sometimes they kind of want to possess the ball. Sometimes it can be very free flowing. Sometimes,
so basically they don't have a set identity yet.
I can't give you one. No. And not to beat the horse to death, but I think missing your captain in midfield engine room is a big part of that.
Mhm.
And then obviously, you had Laurent Kissidou was a guy that you've had on the roster for several years. That's a key part of the team that was missing for a game or two because of a suspension. But it's I couldn't. I mean, if you asked me to tell you things that they do well, I can't. I can't tell you like one thing that you can hang. Like every team should have one thing that they can hang their hat on. Like come hell or high water, this is what we're going to do well, even if we stink at everything else. I can't. It's not.
Yeah.
They're not really stout defensively. They're not really good at scoring goals. They're not really good at keeping possession of the ball. They're not really good at forcing you to turn the ball over in your half. Um, it's just maybe that's something that will just come with time. Again, they've only played 4 league games and an Open Cup game. Again, it's early, but once the calendar flips to May, I think you don't get to say, "Oh, well, it's early and they'll figure it out" anymore. But I will. Even last year, 901 FC started off a little bit. Then 2021 as well. They didn't really hit their stride until the miracle win against Birmingham on Labor Day weekend, and then they were unstoppable. And last year, the first couple of weeks, it was a little bit, they lost 3-0 at home to the Riverhounds in the season opener. And then they went on the road in the Open Cup and lost to Chattanooga, who's a 4th or 5th division team in a league where they don't pay their referees, but that's a different story. But outside, last year, outside of those first couple of games, it was smooth sailing for the most part, with the exception of the Rio Grande Valley game I think in September on a Wednesday night, which was just a frustrating game. If I recall for the podcast episode I did that night, I said that I think I called it that was annoying. But just there's a lot of different variables. You lose the coach and replace him with a dude who's never had a winning record at any club he's ever coached at. You lose a couple of players, but you keep the key ones. Then your captain's out hurt. Then there's just a lot of little things, I guess you could say. I sound kind of almost uninformed, but I can't really tell you why they're not good at any one particular thing.
Yeah, and I think one of the keys for any new head coach should be, at least in my eyes, is some sort of consistency as far as an idea of a vision on how you want this team to play. Because obviously, when you come in, especially when you've got a drastic difference in play style from the previous coach to yourself, well, you want to instill and kind of beat it in their head, how they're supposed to play so that they can get used to it and they're able to execute it better, with all the repetition of all these games playing that same play style. But if you're telling me right now, that Glass is changing changing his play style like whenever he feels like it, well, they're never going to have a set identity.
Well, I
And
wouldn't necessarily say that he's changing it. Like, I feel like, the starting 11 has been pretty consistent, when possible. It's just, like I'm watching them and I'm never quite sure what it is that I'm watching. That's kind of a nebulous explanation. But if I don't know what it is that I'm watching, I don't know how to describe it to anybody else.
you have a point.
But look at the lineup sheet, and the starting 11's usually about as close to the same as it can be. The formation doesn't seem to be radically different. So maybe it's just too complicated the system. Excuse me, it's too complicated the system, and the players just aren't getting it yet. Or maybe it's just a system that stinks. But you're right. Every coach, you hear this every time, and every coach, every sport, every team, every country in the world, when you get a new coach, we want to change the culture or impose our will, identity, style, like all of that. You hear it in soccer and college football are probably the two most where you hear something about like culture and style of play type things. And maybe I just have a very simplistic soccer brain and I'm missing the finer points of what 901 FC is trying to do. But I don't think that's the case. It's just I mean, to oversimplify it, I mean they're just not very good.
And there's also, so kind of going a little bit forward a little bit, you do have two ex-RGV FC players on your roster. One of them is Aquino Connor Ward that I'm seeing he has been a consistent starter.
He has been.
In these last couple of games. The other one has been Dylan Borjak, who he's struggling to break.
I don't believe he's even been on the field. I think maybe he came on as a substitute in one of those first two games, but I don't believe he came onto the field against Vegas the other night. Yeah. And he was a guy that was kind of towards the back end of last season, if I'm not mistaken, was kind of like a not quite a super sub, but it was always one when you put him on the field, you felt like the potential for good things were coming. He wasn't being brought on just for the sake of bringing on a sub. I feel like when Dylan Borjak came on in the, I want to say, when did he get here? I want to say
he got there like the week before the playoffs. It was something crazy.
It was real late. It was like September. Yeah,
and it was because Dylan Borjak, if I recall correctly,
he requested the trade.
Yes, because he felt like he wasn't getting enough minutes under Wilmer,
and he wasn't.
And he was like you mentioned, Dylan Borjak was a player that whenever he came on, in some way or another, he would revolutionize the attack. We'd have some games where our attack became so stagnant and repetitive. And whenever he was brought in, like he brought this extra spark into the offense. Didn't necessarily translate 100% into goals, but at least there was something different to try to break apart defenses.
He brought juice. He would spice things up, and I know there were one or two games where he did come on as a sub and score, but I cannot remember for one. Maybe he got a goal in that Detroit game, but I don't think so. But no, he was one that I was glad they kept because he was the spark plug. Is you could just throw him on there and you may not score, but from a media person's perspective, is that it's about to get a little bit more entertaining out there.
Yes.
When he comes on. So I feel like if Philip Goodrum can get going, a lot of other problems are probably going to be able to resolve themselves. Because when things open up for him, then defenders are going to be drawn to him, and then we signed Bruno Lapa from Birmingham, and Bruno Lapa was a killer. Oh man, he was a Memphis killer. I was like, please don't let this dude get the ball. Nope, there he goes. Okay. But we brought him in, and I think he got his first goal here this weekend against Vegas, if I'm not mistaken. But I'm hoping it's Philip Goodrum. If Goodrum can get it going, then I think a lot of other things open up for a lot of other players. And then, perhaps that'll be a situation where everybody's so keyed in on Goodrum, because when somebody is a dangerous goal scorer, you've got to be keyed in on them. You'll sub somebody off and bring Borjak on, and they'll be so focused on Goodrum over here that Borjak can and he could make runs through defenses with the ball and without the ball.
Yeah.
And that was like, we're missing that.
Yeah. Unfortunately, he's one of those kind of players, I guess, because he's young, they kind of overlook him. I don't know. But I do feel like that Borjak is a player with a lot of potential. If you have a coach that is able to refine him, you might have a good player for the future, or at least a player that you can end up selling in the future to another league. We're starting to see that a lot in the USL Championship, where they're selling these young players over to Europe.
Yeah, Louisville's doing that. They're sending people to Benfica.
Yeah. Jacob, you have any questions you want to ask?
Funny enough, I had a question about Borjak, but he answered it. So
I'll tell you, as a media member, those are always fun, where you get to where you've got your question lined up and ready to go, and you're like, okay, I know what I'm going to do. Oh wait, you just answered it. Damn. That happened to me at the She Believes Cup in 2019 in Nashville. it was Phil Neville for the England women's team, and I was
Yeah.
about to ask him a question about, so are y'all going to go for the win in the next game, even though y'all don't need the win to win the little fake trophy they give out for that?
Yeah.
Mhm.
And so that the little media relations guy pointed to me, and I said, well, I had my hand up, but you already answered my question, so I guess that means you are going to go for it. And he kind of got a little chuckle out of that and went on down
Yeah.
the road. But
Yeah.
So what are you expecting out of this game? What has been your analysis of what you've seen from us so far, and we'll tell you if you're on the right path.
Well, truth be told, I hadn't caught hardly much of any of y'all this year. Just I have been very busy with refereeing, got a lot of tournaments going on.
Yeah.
So outside of
Mhm.
901 FC and covering the Americans, I haven't had much time for much outside stuff. But you know, it's a road game. It's a game that last year finished 2-2, and there wasn't anything great about that, but there wasn't anything terrible about that.
Hmm.
You know, what I want to see from 901 FC in this game is I want to see that there's been some sort of progress made. Like we have some semblance of a game plan that I can discern, and that I say we like I'm part of the team. There's some semblance of the players knowing what they're doing.
Hmm.
That there has been progress. That, you know what, maybe it's a scenario where you might not get the win, but you know, I feel like in soccer there's a lot of teams that get just shelled and are like, oh, you know, other than the 5 goals that we gave up, I think we were the better team on the night. That drives me crazy.
Hmm.
But if I can see something where, yeah, maybe you don't get the result, but you do look like the better team, I can probably live with that. Even at this early, you know, we're still in the early portion of the schedule. I could probably live with that, but I don't know. My hopes are not high on that. I mean,
Yep.
you know, you can only go so long before you can say it's early in the season. At some point, you just might have to admit that
Yeah.
we think.
Yeah,
Mhm.
and I mean, unfortunately, we the Toros fans, are in a similar situation with RGV. I mean, the difference is that this is our third year with Wilmer Cabrera,
Mhm.
The
but
3-year rule.
yeah, but the fact is that every year, the Toros would always go into a situation where they would overhaul their roster year after year. This is actually the first time where in the offseason they retained most of their players from last season.
Okay.
Unfortunately, most of the key players like Christian Pinzon and Frank Lopez, I mean, they're out on injury, right? So now we've got players in the offense. Out of 3 up on top, only Ricky Reese has been is a returner. You've got Wilmer Cabrera Jr., Cristiano Francois, and frankly, and we're actually going to talk about it a little right after this segment. They have not performed at all. This is
it's always a little bit suspect when the coach's son isn't performing but still keeps getting minutes in any sport.
The thing is like we don't have anybody to replace him. That's
true.
the problem.
Mm-hmm.
That's the problem. Because if Christian Pinzon were healthy, he'd be the starter. He'd be the starter, like no questions asked.
Mhm.
But behind Wilmer Cabrera Jr., you've got a 15-year-old or in a 17-year-old.
Yeah, I don't know that you want to roll high school kids out there.
So and that's just an issue with that the ownership has kind of been a little bit cheaper with this roster, and it kind of, I mean, our roster.
I'm very familiar with cheap ownership.
Tell me about it. Tell me about it. I had enough experience with the Houston Dynamo of Gabriel Brenner.
Everybody wants former Memphis Grizzlies coach Lionel Hollins put it better than anybody else I'll ever hear it. He said they want that champagne taste on the beer budget.
That's a really good one. That's a really good one.
Not so coincidentally, he was relieved of his his contract was not renewed.
He got fired for speaking facts.
Well, his contract was this was in the 2013 Western Conference Finals when they lost to the Spurs.
Yeah,
and his contract was up anyway. And they were kind of just asking him about it, and he's like, "We want champagne taste on the beer budget." And then we're like, "Yeah, we're gonna hire your assistant now."
Ouch.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. But yeah, but I mean, that's the situation with RGV. I mean, offensively, they,
Mhm.
you know, just to think about it, is it's your midfielders and the defenders that have scored for RGV. You know, Taylor Davila has 2 goals, and then the other goal scored by Jonathan Ricketts. And then one, and then another one was who was it? I'm trying to remember. So it's Davila, and then Jonathan Ricketts. Oh, Ricky Reese, Ricky Reese,
Yeah.
who's one of the top 3, but that's it. You know, so right now we're struggling offensively. So it's going to be interesting to you know, to see, you know, who's gonna be the how can I say it?
Where are
The
the goals
least
coming
worst.
from?
No, it's gonna be this game. I feel like it's gonna be
Battle of
who's
the
gonna be the least
toilet?
worst.
The least. Who's going to suck the least?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean,
Battle of the wooden spoon. That's it. Yeah.
Those are those are never fun
Mhm.
to have to suck. Those are just ones where everybody is just like, can we just let a meteor hit the stadium or something?
yeah.
I don't know that we're quite there yet, but we might, if this game was being played a little bit farther down the road, we might be there.
You know
Mhm.
what's interesting. I think even if RGVC were better this year, where we're at so far, I still would be kind of afraid of this game because
Mhm.
RGVFC historically has been where they've played teams that are vastly inferior on paper,
Mhm.
and they've lost against them.
Mhm.
And now recently we lost against Loudoun United last season, against Las Vegas Lights as well. I mean, LA Galaxy too. We could never beat them. You know, they left the USL Championship, and we never
Mhm.
won a single game against them.
Yep.
You know, so it's one of those things like, yeah, we could be better, but
I feel like that's a
some
thing though across a lot of. I know it's specifically in like playoff hockey, where it doesn't matter how good or bad you are. You might just keep running into that one team that just for whatever reason just has your number.
mhm, yeah.
And I mean, that sounds like what you were just describing there. Just for whatever reason, I mean,
LA Galaxy too.
Los Dos was never anything. I mean, I don't even know if they were really a true feeder team or not. I don't recall hearing of any Galaxy superstars
It
being
was
born
a
from Los Dos.
well, yeah, not necessarily superstars, but
Maybe
although I
Yossi
think the only
Zardes
one,
back in the
I think
day.
the only one that off the top of my head that I remember that played with Los Dos and came a little bit more renowned was, I think, Julian Araujo. I
Yeah.
think, yeah, Julian Araujo
Well,
played
now he's
with
with
Los.
Barcelona's B team, so
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So, but outside of that, you would get the occasional signing, that would go to the LA Galaxy first team, but really would not get a lot of minutes, with them. So, I mean,
I will say is sort of shifting gears just a tad. I will say that it is nice the way that USL has been doing the scheduling the last 2
Oh,
years,
it's been
where
amazing.
you get a lot more East-West matchups,
Mhm.
especially after the way they had it set up during the COVID year, where you just played the same 3 teams over and over and over and
oh
over
yeah,
and over
that was
again.
Yeah.
It was
terrible.
just that's part of why I was like, oh, I get to go watch Birmingham again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, or
That's how
No,
we
we
were,
feel you.
because it was like we'd always get San Antonio. We got
mhm.
El Paso,
Uh,
Austin Bold. F in the
mhm.
chat
We
for the
got the
Yeah.
Bold.
Oklahoma team as well.
Oh yeah, Energy,
Oh,
Well,
there's like
well,
3 of them
before,
in
yeah,
Oklahoma,
yeah,
aren't there?
before they also went out, we also got
New Mexico,
the
I believe.
Roughnecks is what I was thinking of, and New Mexico,
Tulsa.
yes, because Tulsa, because everything was center for us. It was perfect. We got
Mhm.
to play El Paso 3 times. We got to play San Antonio. Then Austin was still there. We had basically San Antonio. Then it was also the 2 Oklahoma teams because they were right up the road too from
Yeah.
Dallas. So I mean, to be fair, we had it made. I like that too, saving money. But then I like also playing a lot more teams. We get to go. I mean, we got to go over to Pittsburgh. Haven't done that. We got to go over to Detroit. Hadn't done that. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's much
and
nicer too. I agree.
it's really, and I think I mentioned it in the before the season started. We were talking about the schedule when they announced it, where I said, like, it's a more apples to apples comparison now between every team in the USL Championship,
Mhm.
because before you'd be like, okay, well, this team is in first place in the Western Conference, but They didn't go up against Louisville City. They didn't go up against
Pittsburgh,
Charleston, Pittsburgh,
Charleston,
you
the
know.
established clubs in the league.
Yeah. So, but now it's a more direct comparison of like, okay, like who's really, the better team in the conference or even in the USL in general.
Mm-hmm.
So I hope we're able to continue this scheduling, for the next couple of years.
Well, that's one of the things is about the variety is the spice of life. And, so it's a little bit cool to have last year when Rio Grande Valley came in. Plus, it helps you learn a little bit about where people that you knew from yesteryear, where they are now. Like when I got the game notes when y'all came here last year, I was like, oh, Wilmer Cabrera. I remember him from coaching the Dynamo. Yeah. I remember the Colorado Springs Switchbacks came here, I think maybe in 2021, or maybe that was last year. I don't remember. They kind of run together. But I remember when the Colorado Springs Switchbacks came here and I looked at the roster and they had a 36-year-old Jose Torres out there. I was like, is that the same Jose Torres that used to play at the World Cup in South Africa?
Yeah. Yep. And we have now, and we have him now.
They'll have him.
And so that's one of the fun things about covering teams in this league is just like that one random name that you remember for whatever reason from 5 or 10 years ago, and you're like, oh, this is where he ended up. Okay, that's kind of cool.
Yeah, I think I like for us, it's hey, how's it going, D the Demon? Like for us, it kind of gives up it gives us an opportunity to check up on a lot of former players of us for RGV. Like it'd be like for us, okay, so I want to see how Dylan Borjak is doing. Like for me especially, like Chuy Enriquez back when he was with Oakland. Now that he's with Monterey Bay. You get to see him and how they've improved or how they've stagnated since leaving the club.
Is it one where God we miss you or thank God you left?
Yeah, pretty much. But I think so far most of the players that have left, or a couple of players that would be like, man, I wish you would come back.
It's like the Wolverine meme where he's laying there in the bed with the picture looking at it.
Yes, exactly. I've literally done that meme with a picture of Chuy Enriquez.
I am going to 100% do that because Charleston Battery comes to Memphis in June, and so that's the Ben Pierman return game. I am 100% doing.
Oh, you should. I think that would be hilarious.
That's gonna happen.
Yeah, you should, man. So real quick before we sign off, so. What is tradition here with Down in the Valley is that when we're talking about the preview for the upcoming match, we end the podcast giving our predictions, but not just any old predictions. We give our regular predictions, and obviously what we have that's tradition is what we call the bold predictions. So you can think of the most outlandish thing you can predict about this game possible. Jacob's notorium about saying everybody gets like 3 people get a red card per team, or it's raining with 50-mile-per-hour winds, something.
Hey, that happened here last weekend.
That sounds about right for here too. Sometimes 50-mile-per-hour winds during the day, and we're like, oh yeah, no, it's just business as usual. When other places, that's a tornado.
No, right now when you were talking, Lawrence, about this game against Las Vegas, how we says like, oh, that sounds familiar. We had a situation. I want to say it was 2020, Jacob, or 2021? I think it was 2020
during the pandemic when we had a curfew. Ray Silva, bless his heart for this. Stayed there till the game was over at 3 a.m. if I'm not mistaken.
Yes,
around that time.
Yeah, same reason. It was a strong storm that was pretty much stagnant. It was producing a lot of lightning. And I remember I didn't go to that game because it was my sister's birthday, so we were celebrating at the house. But I do remember they were playing, and there was this lightning strike that struck like less than a mile away from my house. And right when it happened, right, obviously accounting for the delay, of the broadcast, but right as that lightning struck here, you heard a loud thunder on the broadcast, and they ended up delaying the game. So
Didn't that happen on a Texas Rangers game like 15 years ago, where there was just this earth-shattering thunderclap and all the players just dropped what they were doing and ran into the dugout?
I don't remember.
That made like the Sports Center not top 10 one time, I think, when I was in high school.
Yeah, I'm not really sure about that. I'm not a huge Texas Rangers fan, but yeah, and so that game, it was a similar situation. Is like, Tulsa, or yeah, it was Tulsa, right? They didn't want to delay. They didn't want to postpone the game until the next day because I think supposedly because tickets, they had already had the airline tickets, and they didn't want to cancel. They didn't want to, so they were kind of forcing the hand of RGV to finish the game right then and there. So, but yeah, they ended up ending the game almost at 3:00 in the morning. So yeah, that was not fun for Ray, bless his heart.
Yeah.
But so what is your regular prediction for this match on Saturday?
Well, let's call it a 1-1 draw.
1-1?
Yeah, I mean, doesn't sound like either team's particularly good at scoring, but neither team is particularly leaky at the back end anymore. So 1-1, that sounds about right.
Jacob?
He says 1-1. I would say 0-0. Neither side gets a shot on goal. How about that? That's not even a bold prediction. That's just what's going to happen.
That's just a regular prediction. Ooh,
that's just going to be a regular prediction.
I mean, considering that we just came off a game with 0% shooting accuracy, that's not very far fetched.
That's like USA Argentina at the Copa America in 2016.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
Yeah. Honestly, so for me, I'm gonna say my bold prediction is going to be a 2-2. I do feel like
that's not a good sign for goal scoring when the bold prediction is 2-2.
Well, my regular prediction is 2-2, and the reason is I feel like RGV has some lapses where they lose their concentration, lack of communication. I know we saw that a lot against in the Open Cup game against Tormenta, where there was a blatant lack of communication between the midfielders and the defenders that ended up leaving an attacker wide open inside the box. So and also RGV is they're very prone to breaking down whenever they get played with the high pressure. And so far this season, they haven't been really good with counterattacks. Yeah. So that leaves the door open for Memphis to be able to take advantage of some situations.
And that's what I say. If there have been one or two times, I believe one of the second goal against Vegas was a very gorgeous. It was almost like vintage Brazilian counterattack, like Brazil's heyday of like 2002. Like that was. I mean, it's just like ruthless and devastating. So that's. I mean, I guess that would be strength against weakness, so much as there is one. But
yeah. So we see D the Demon says 2-1 prediction. Toros win, and he says only because Memphis is last in their division.
Not just last in the division, last in the league.
Last in the league.
Give us our due, guys. Give us our due.
By technically one.
One does not preclude the other.
Yeah.
Yeah, by 2 points.
Michael says 2-1 Toros after a Dylan Borjak goal. So now we go to our bold prediction. All right, let's see what you got.
I'm gonna say bold prediction. It gets chippy. I say there are exactly 6 yellow cards shown, and Memphis's goal comes on a Philip Goodrum penalty. Is that multiple predictions, or is that just
no?
That's perfect.
That's perfect. Yeah,
6 yellow cards and a Goodrum penalty goal.
So 1-0 win.
No, it's the 1-1. We're gonna give a goal somewhere in there, but that will be the goal. Will be on a Goodrum penalty scored by
with Philip. the six yellows.
Yes,
Jacob. All right.
Okay. Here's my fantastic one. Okay, so looking at it right now, it's going to be a little real, but also it's still going to be the same. We have an 11-mile-per-hour wind for Saturday. Sunday also has a chance of rain. So let's just say it's going to be switched. That we're going to have some rain on Saturday too. Unpredicted rain. keeping it a little basic. But again, here's the kicker. It's going to be 1-0. A Tyler Derrick goal. He's not going to, but he's not going to kick it from all the way across. No, it's going to be in the 90th minute. He's going to score the winning goal off a header. He's going to be called up into the box.
You know what makes it even more bold, Lawrence, is that RGV is terrible with the crossing.
Mm-hmm.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's what makes it even more bold. Besides the fact that it's the keeper. Besides the keeper.
So now that I know that, if we give up a 90th minute goal to a team that stinks at crossing the ball, I might chuck something across the room. I'll
RIP laptop or phone or whatever you're watching the game in.
Luckily this laptop was a gift from work, so I didn't have to pay for it. But
yeah, but I'm pretty sure you're gonna have to pay. You're gonna have
to I'd have to pay for one if it broke somehow.
Yeah,
like,
explain it to work. Why?
I don't know. It just slipped out of my. It just slipped out of my desk.
Guys.
Yeah, the screen is cracked.
Does a smashed laptop that is broken into little pieces, does that count as a regular wear and tear?
I guess it depends on what line of work you're in.
True. That is very true. So D the Demon says bold prediction 2-0. Bold prediction from Mike says Wilmer Jr. has a hat trick and we win 5-0 with 2 goals from Cheetah, aka Cristiano Francois.
Well, that certainly fits the bold right there.
That's perfect. That's a perfect bold prediction. Francois showing up for the first time as well. And Wilmer Cabrera having a hat trick, so both players that haven't scored score.
You know what I find so mind-boggling? I always enjoy reading John Morrissey's analysis and his technical analysis. I somehow cannot fathom how he thinks that Cristiano Francois has been good in his position this year so far. It's
I feel like even the people who are just totally beholden to whatever their formula is for whatever, they all have that. Everybody has a blind spot for that one player. I feel like that's universal across sports, where it's just it doesn't matter. You can have your opinion and be right 98% of the time, but for whatever reason, you have a blind spot for that one player. For, I don't know, maybe you're friends with him, maybe you just like the story, maybe you were high on him initially and it didn't pan out, and you're that's your story and you're sticking to it. But I feel like maybe that's the case. Maybe that's what's going on there.
Yeah, but okay. So for me, my bold prediction: 3-0 Memphis 901 victory.
Oh my!
With Dylan Borzek scoring a brace coming off of the bench.
A revenge game.
Yes.
Yep.
And I feel like it's gonna be one of those things where Dylan Borzek is gonna want to prove Wilmer Cabrera wrong for letting him go.
Okay.
Or for not giving him minutes here.
For not giving him minutes. Remember, he wanted to go.
Yes.
He wanted to go, because in that first game, we go back to it, even last season, because I love him. I love that player. Memphis 901 are so lucky to have him, and Wilmer Cabrera is stupid for letting him go. I will say that. I'm sorry, but that is my true feelings about it. It just, in that first game, he gets that goal. He looked spectacular. He looked spectacular coming off the bench, trying to make plays, but the offense at that time couldn't do anything. And then he got benched even longer and didn't start games and things like that. And it was frustrating. Him and Nodarse started to, Akwe, not Nodarse, Akwe. Him and Akwe finally shined. And that was a time where Dylan felt like he wasn't getting enough minutes, which was true. He should have gotten more minutes. I'm still frustrated about that. 901 FC again are lucky. And if they're not careful, they will do the same thing RGV FC did, take him for granted, and he will be out. He will be out off to another club that actually will play him the correct amount of minutes. I promise you that's going to happen if they're not careful.
So, Lawrence, before we finish up this show, is there anything else you want to add before we wrap it up?
Not really. I mean, I guess I could throw my social medias out there.
course.
I guess you find me personally on Twitter at ldoc93, 901 Soccer Podcast at 901 Soccer Podcast at 901 Soccer Pod on Twitter, also on Facebook, just 901 Soccer. And then I'll pimp out Bluff City Media too at Bluff City _ media. 901 Soccer Podcast is all of the soccer content, and it's all soccer content, and that's where it stays. And then me, I everything from food to college football to whatever the topic of the day is. And Bluff City Media is going to be all just Memphis sports. So if you're out there in the Rio Grande Valley area and just have a hankering to follow whatever's going on in the Memphis sporting scene, you're more than welcome.
Yeah, I gotta follow those Memphis Redbirds. I'm a Cardinals fan.
Yeah, they're smoking it right now. They're
Let's go.
best team in AAA baseball.
Yeah, hopefully when that little thing comes up, Cardinals will get some of that going too.
Mm-hmm.
Get some of those AAA players pitching whatever we need, because apparently 15 runs sometimes is not enough.
Ooh, tough spot.
Yeah, 15-5, I think I forget how much we won today, but yeah.
Well, guys, we thank you all so much for tuning in tonight. Lawrence, thank you so much for coming on the show. Hope it's not going to be the last time that you're on here in the Down in the Valley podcast. You will always be welcome every time our two teams will eventually face off. It was a really, really, really fun conversation to have with you today. So may the best team win on Saturday. And
we'll use the term best loosely.
Well, yes, you're right. Yeah. You're right, but we have to be diplomatic about it. Otherwise, you're gonna next thing you know, we get some tweets, from someone from front office or from technical staff saying, "Oh, why are you just bashing this team?" Yada yada yada. It's happened to me before, so.
Oh, same.
Yeah. At the end of the day. Doesn't even matter. We all have our.
If you don't want me saying when you're good, I say nice things. When you're bad, I say mean things.
Exactly.
Exactly.
I just don't understand how there's some people that
it's all about control and narrative.
Exactly. And you know what the worst part is that when these players or coaching staff, when they try to diminish our opinions by saying, "Oh, he's never played a game of soccer."
That's my favorite. That's my favorite is when I'm talking in other circles and they're like, stick to soccer. Oh, because I know soccer and therefore cannot possibly have any knowledge on any other subject in the entire world.
Exactly.
Or I love he's like, oh, you're just a referee. What would you know? Okay, cool. All right. Those are always my favorite.
That sounded like so disingenuous. It's like, what do you know? You're a referee. You're supposed to know the laws of the game.
Yeah.
Yeah, but all right, guys. All right, Lawrence. We'll go ahead and let you go because I know. Yeah, sure, no problem. And because I know you got the USA Mexico game to watch, and I know everybody.
I've got El Cachico on in the background.
That's a good one. That is a very good one.
That's great.
Now it's just gonna be a question of I think the biggest thing a lot of people are tuning in is more along the lines of, can the Mexican national team fans behave themselves and not say the homophobic chant, because
I bet you they've already said it.
Yeah, because they already said if they do that they're going to be banned from playing
for 2 years. I saw 2 years. Today. Yeah. I don't know if does that going to include Gold Cup and potential Copa America, or is that just going to be the cash grab friendlies they play over here?
Oh, that is actually a really good question, but I think at the end,
it would just be the friendlies.
I think at the end of the day, it'll be just the friendlies, because the CONMEBOL and CONCACAF do not want to miss out.
Yeah.
That's a topic for another show, another time, another day.
Yeah, definitely. But guys, thank you all so much for tuning in tonight. I know we had some pending topics that we wanted to talk about, but we will mention those. If not on Saturday after the game via Zoom or something, maybe even we'll bring up an individual video talking about, obviously, Quema no Quema, about a quote from Wilmer Cabrera. talking about the inoperability of our offense so far, why we haven't made any movements as far as like 25-day contracts or anything like that. But guys, keep in touch. Follow us on at Down in the RGV on Instagram, Twitter, and of course on TikTok. And always remember, let's support our toros and spread the word of Mr. Toro to everybody you know. Let's grow this community that was built for you all, by Toros fans, for Toros fans. Jacob, thank you so much for hopping on, and Lawrence as well. Hope to see y'all soon. Have a good night.
Take care.
All right, we're good. Yeah, so unfortunately, we did have pending, a couple of topics. So I had a graphic that I actually wanted to show, but right, and it was basically, so this is like I got the 3 players from the top, so Wilmer Jr., Cristiano Francois, and Ricky Reese. So, and basically Ricky had 5 appearances, 10 total shots, 4 of them on target, only 1 goal. Wilmer Cabrera had 10 shots total, 6 on target, 0 goals. So in that aspect, Wilmer's a little bit better. Take a look at Cristiano Francois. 5 appearances, 5 total shots, 2 on target, 0 goals. That's you're telling me 1 shot per game? That is terrible.